Hello, and welcome to another interview on the Gamer Social Club channel. In just a minute or two, we are going to go into an interview with Q from Spire Games. Spire Games has just recently put out Advent Dawn, a visual novel where you and seven strangers are trapped in a cave and there is no escape that you can see. But before we get into that, I just want to make sure that you know if you're not already following the channel, please make sure to click that subscribe button so you can catch all the things that we put on YouTube, like our spoiler casts, our interviews, and our podcasts, including Girl Pod. And make sure that you also check out gamersocialclub.ca. That's the website we write for. You'll be able to see a review up there for Advent Dawn, as well as the rest of our reviews. On the site, you can also find lots of editorials, guides, and news written for gamers, by gamers. Everything you need is going to be in the description down below. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Right. Welcome to another interview here at Gamer Social Club. I am joined by Q from Spire Games. So I'm going to just jump right into it. So Q, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, well, yeah, it's great to be on here and to get to speak with you. Yes, I'm Q. It's not my birth name. It's a little bit of a tag I like to give myself online. Create a bit of mystery around it. We make mystery games. Um, so yes, I'm a developer. I live in Australia, and I really love stories that that surprise you, make you think on a deeper level. And so we just released our third game, Advent Dawn, and yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, thank you. So Advent Dawn
So
is your
Advent Dawn,
third game,
thank you.
as you mentioned. So tell me, how does this tie into the larger universe that people may not be familiar with just yet?
It's a great question. So I wanted all of the games to stand on their own, so that they're their own self-contained story. Yet at the same time, there are these sometimes overlapping characters or overlapping themes. And so as you journey through all the games, you would start to see things in a different light than if you just played the one game. Yet at the same time, I want each game to fully work on its own. And in a funny way, you can play them in any order, is another thing. Even though they all inform one another, it's not as if they're direct sequels that you need to have, say, played the first game to make sense of the third. Um, Having said that, if you had played the first two and then played the third, when you play this third one, you'll be like, oh, that's this. But there's something also exciting starting, say, with Advent Dawn, and then going back and seeing the connections. So essentially, if you were to play the other games, you'll start to see these overlapping ripples, these overlapping mysteries. I don't want to say too much more because I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
spoil some of the plot points. But yeah, that's what I can say. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to imagine to some extent that might be its own interesting challenge because Advent Dawn is the first one that I personally have played, but it then got me wanting to go back and play the other ones to see how they all tie into each other. So, what is that like in the development and the writing to make sure you find that delicate balance?
And yeah, it's a good question. For me, I think what it is there's this sense of, I kind of like the idea that all the great ideas already exist somewhere out there. And I like the idea that creativity is more about uncovering them. It's like kind of like buried treasure. And so as I'm writing these stories, I'm not only trying to craft what I want to say, but I'm trying to uncover something that I feel is already true. And so, funnily enough, I almost feel like as I write a story, I feel like there's something more. And then when I write the next one, I'm also discovering things about the prior games as I write the next one, if that makes sense. And when I write the prior ones, I also leave room for something that I can almost intuit on the inside. It's like I can sense there's something more to be said here, but I don't necessarily need to have it all figured out, but I can kind of sense what it is. And so I write it in and I leave this gap and I kind of have an idea of where I'm going. And then the exciting part when I write the next story is now I can give that more form. And so in one sense, it's exciting because when I'm writing, I'm discovering things about the world that I'm writing as I'm writing it. At the same time, I feel like it already exists. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the way it feels to me. So in terms of getting the balance right, I just look at it as if, okay, well, this story has to make sense for the person playing it. So I can't assume they've got any prior knowledge. But each of these stories are going to inform themselves, inform each other, I meant, because they all exist within the same world, and I'm just uncovering it for the reader and for myself as I write it. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that actually leads into one of my other questions, because you mentioned that it exists and you're uncovering it, right? And you're doing a lot of that with a lot of the Egyptian history, and that's in this with the Eye of Ra and other elements. And I'm not going to dive too deep into that because I want people to enjoy those. But what is that research like to get those elements in there in a way that is accessible to somebody who maybe isn't as familiar, right? Is there a lot of research? Is it something you know? How are you pulling the pieces together? If you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question. I find a lot of stories fascinating, and mythology are some of the oldest stories, and they have all these patterns of ideas that are always relevant. But I think sometimes we lose sight of what is relevant about the stories because culturally we lose connection to, say, the language or the culture that makes those patterns clear. And so sometimes I think what happens is people look back at old stories and say that they're either meaningless or they can't find that relevance, or they think of it as primitive people that didn't understand the world. And I think often that's us imposing or putting our modern lens onto an ancient way of speaking, and what they were saying was actually rich with meaning. But because we've lost the common language, we interpret what they were saying in a completely different way. And so in these stories, I'm trying to catch some of the essence of those ideas and repackage them in completely different ways. And sometimes I'm just using the symbols because they're interesting. I'm not saying I'm not completely being faithful to them, but I am trying to unpack certain ideas that are in those stories. And so for me, I'm partly aware. I've done some study in psychology and religion and other things at university, so I'm quite interested in those things. At the same time, I'm not an expert in Egyptian mythology or Tongan or Samoan mythology. So I used what understanding I did have, and then just went online and researched, starting with, um, you know, Britannica, encyclopedia, and then you'll find other websites. And then, I ended up finding some great government websites for Tonga that was exploring, uh, preserving ancient stories and myths so they weren't lost, and language. So just reading all those stories and looking up things with ancient Egypt. And because I knew it was set there, I wanted to learn something about their stories. But at the same time, I just wanted to write this story. And it was funny, as I learned more about it and as I just kept writing the story, it almost unpacked itself, if that makes sense. It almost automatically dovetailed. It's almost like the more and more I just kept these stories in my head, and then also imagined I was these characters in the cave, it 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 came out itself. It did require a lot of thinking, so I'll often get to a point in the story and I can sense that there's something in this story that's important
Mhm.
and it aligns to the myth or this symbol in some way. And so I'll just pause for a long period of time and I'll just stop writing. And for days, I'll just keep thinking and just, what does this idea mean? What does it mean? And eventually that's kind of what I was saying earlier about, like, it's like buried treasure. It's like the ideas
Mhm.
are already there and I've just got to wait until I uncover it properly. And so, yeah, I suppose I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. It does. Because I think it's an interesting dynamic of taking things that exist, blending it in a way, and you do that a bit with some of the characters in the game too, right? Because there are characters that are like, well, I wouldn't have expected a man of science to say this or to view it this way, and of course you don't view it this way. You're not coming at it from this perspective. So it's very interesting that you're also using your own perspective, but putting them in the different characters. But I think that's what makes the characters feel very real, that they are, parts of yourself or the writing process and perspectives that other people would have. So they don't feel very tropey. They don't feel, so out of place in the situation that they find themselves in. So I think it's a very good balance, and taking those real experiences that you're having as the writer and implementing them for others to see it.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for saying that and for noticing that. I yeah, a lot of the time, as you said, I'm almost wrestling with my own ideas as someone who personally loves and values science at the same time as values stories and the patterns that myth can capture. Both things are important and crucial, and I believe they shine a different spotlight on certain ideas that are both true in different ways. Um, and so, yes, I think in a sense, I'm very much like Atlas, for instance, who is a
Mhm.
character who's more scientifically minded. But at the same time, at times I feel like I'm more like, say, Kimika or one of the other characters who is more story based and yes. So thank you for saying that. And I was trying to um, be really true to um, to those ways of thinking. So sometimes what people do when they have different perspectives is they present a really shallow version of the opposing belief so that theirs looks stronger.
Mhm.
And in this story, I just wanted to show the ideas and contrast different ways of looking at things and allow the reader, in a sense, to interpret it the way they want to. And sometimes maybe it's not clear which is the correct interpretation in life.
Right.
Um,
Mhm.
there might, I do believe there's a limited amount of things that can be true. Not everything can be true at once, but sometimes truths overlap in ways that maybe we'll never get to the bottom of. And sitting with that that mystery, I find fascinating. And so, yeah, hopefully that came through in the story as well.
It did, it did. And you mentioned patterns, and I noticed that there is a pattern and layers of 3 that also come up. And we've talked about this a little bit, not on this interview, but in Discord, right? So is there something specific about layers or patterns of 3 that really draws you in, or was this just like a something that worked with writing, right? Because some of it people will see as they play through the game and progress, right? But even as I was thinking about the layers of 3 in the map, right? The map serves as 3 different elements for the player, right? It is the navigational piece that the characters are seeing. It is also the way that players are able to see the different branching narratives that they're going through, right? And then it is also for the characters a place that they are getting feedback, right? There is a scene where someone gives directions through a labyrinth in there, right? So again, we have these 3 separate or sort of separate uses, but again, the number 3 just as a pattern comes up. So is there something really specific to that? Is that just happenstance? Is that's what would just happen to work? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I I almost view it as almost like a so in my second visual novel, Synesthesia, I talk a lot about following that. There's this idea of following the golden thread, which I won't say anymore because I don't want to say any spoilers. But it's almost in that the idea of a spiral is the central idea for that second visual novel. This one is more about patterns of 3, as you said. And so the connection there is sometimes I feel like it's almost like, how can I put it? It presents itself, that pattern, and it's something that I then, as the writer, have got to stay true to. And the more and more I dig in that area, to use that treasure analogy, the more I discover how that pattern of 3 relates to the story. And so, in a funny way, you stumble upon it, that then, as I'm intentional to continue to be aware of that pattern and keep my eyes open in the writing process to how that might inform different aspects of the story, it's amazing how it all just starts to come together almost by itself. And that probably comes back to what I was saying earlier, where at those moments it feels less like you're in control and more like you're discovering something that already exists. And so it's a great question because, in one sense, yes, I wrote it, but in another sense, I suppose little clusters of 3, little patterns of 3 are everywhere around us. And it's something, and there's all kinds of other patterns that potentially in other stories I might, touch upon and then see how that works. But yes, I was intentional in this story to follow that as a bit of a motif and a theme. And so it really starts with that whole, there's 2 sides to things, and then there's a third that brings things together. That's how it started. But then it branched off into all kinds of other areas.
I mean, I love that because I think it's just so interesting to see how patterns emerge. And I know, unfortunately, in general, like lexicon, people are like, oh, rules of 3, 2 celebrities pass, a third one pass, right? And the idea of 3 always pops up in spaces. So it's really interesting to see used in something a little bit more fantastical and in this story, and something that I hope to never experience, because I hope to never be stuck in a cave like that because I have such bad claustrophobia. So but just really interesting to see that all come together. But you mentioned synesthesia, so I want to use sort of this moment to pivot to the art style a little bit, because while your first game is maybe a little bit more narratively tied because of characters and things that you'll notice in the game, the art style for this one seems more similar to synesthesia. So I'm curious, what made you want to use that style? Was it just the artist really seemed to match the story? Was that the art style you wanted for the story? How did the change in art from your first entry to your second and now third game really come about?
It's a good question. I've always very much enjoyed the more anime aesthetic for mystery stories. So some of my favorite visual novels have been the anime style, whether it's the Zero Escape series or Steins Gate, if you've heard of those
Mm-hmm.
ones, and some of these, I really enjoy them. Um, for the first one, even though I was inspired by those, I was experimenting with how do I find my own identity within the
Okay.
space. And I stumbled upon an artist, and I knew my story was quite dense. So my first visual novel, uh, I would describe as probably, how can I put it? It's probably story-wise, it's got the most going on. It's got some of my favorite ideas out of all my stories. There's a lot that I really like about it and that still holds up. But it also, as I said, is very dense. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
information. You've got to follow a lot. And the story is very heavy. And it didn't really match the anime aesthetic. There is some lightheartedness to it, don't get me wrong, but it's much more hard sci-fi.
Okay.
Got to have your brain switched on and much less interactivity.
Okay.
And so there are choices, but there's no real puzzles or anything like that. And I learnt a lot because I didn't expect it to sell very well, and it didn't, to be transparent. But I really loved the story I told, and it gave me confidence because those that did play it really enjoyed it. But I also got some very valuable feedback on things that didn't work about the story. And
Okay.
so when I did synesthesia, I really wanted to take that and go, okay, what did and didn't work about the first story,
Mm-hmm.
and what are my strengths as a writer, and what are the stories that I love, as opposed to what do I think I should just make, what should I make, as opposed to what would I love to produce. And so I did pivot with synesthesia, but I also didn't leave behind the elements and the world and the story that I started to develop in my first one, which was the VII Enigma. So, so that I think I'm much closer to the perfect game that I want to make. I don't think Advent Dawn is quite there, only because I think honestly I probably need some more budget to really get it from where it
Mm-hmm.
currently is to where I'd really love to go. But I'm almost there, I think. And so to answer your question, the development of the art style was a combination of my own development as a writer and as a developer, um, me being confident in what I was doing to put a bit more of that finance in to get better elements into it.
Mm-hmm.
And Advent Dawn is I'm really happy with it. I think most people will love it. And I'm hoping for my next release it to just go up to that next level and hopefully be the perfect game. Well, that's always a pie in the sky dream, but you shoot for the stars and get to
Mm-hmm.
the moon or whatever the the expression is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's something to always like aim for, right? It's you aim for perfection and hope that you always continue to improve. And I think that's for anybody, right? That's not just like developing games. That's not just that should be like a life thing, right? And you mentioned budget, so I'm curious with the being confident to put more in, is that also what led to collaborating with people on the puzzle elements, right? Because one of the things at Gamer Social Club, for anybody who's watching this for the first time, maybe when we play a game and we review it, we complete it, right? Like we go through everything. So obviously going through credits, I see that there were some people that were credited with some of the puzzle pieces, or contributing to the puzzles. So did you decide the puzzles? Was that collaborative? Did they decide it? Right? And was that one of those things that now that you're like, I feel more confident, I want to include more of these elements? And could you see yourself including more of those in future entries?
Yeah, that's a great question. I So I designed most of the puzzles, but what I was really able to do with the help from Kia Azad and I don't know how you say it, ESS. It's got a little underscore. I
Mm-hmm.
never know how to pronounce it. Um, but they provided some great stuff online, and I was able to dialogue a lot with Kia, who provides various tutorials, and he's very good with the coding side of certain puzzles. And I'm pretty okay with the coding of them, but I'm not like at that level where I've got that confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So what they were really able to help with was basically getting some base code for like how you can do certain puzzles, how you can get certain outcomes. And then in my mind, I would have the idea for the puzzle I want and then use their kind of base coding and some of their kind of base elements. And then I'd rework it all to what I wanted, but without having to start from scratch.
Okay.
Because I think that would be really hard to figure out
Mm-hmm.
some of the coding, and particularly with the engine I use, it's all completely code based. So there's no visual editors. It's just writing out strings of Python code. And and whilst I've gotten pretty good at certain elements of it, yeah, that's starting from scratch with that is really tricky. So yeah, as you said, partnering with people who have this expertise in how to make things work on that level. And then from my end, it was knowing what the narrative, what the story, where I was trying to go with the story and the puzzle. And yeah, so hopefully that answers the question there.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you already mentioned, future games and, where you see yourself going and improving. You know, if you feel comfortable sharing, do you think that your next game will continue in the same universe? Do you think you would try something a little different? Do you think that there's just, a lot more to tell in this universe and you could see this continuing to grow? If you have an idea, I know this one is, but at the time we're recording this, it's not even fully out yet, right? Um, it'll be out in 2 days from this recording. So just curious if you already have in mind where you go next.
Yeah, I have the feeling that I would like to wrap up this. I don't know if you would call it a saga, but this part of the story with the next entry. That's what I've got, and I've got some ideas for what that story might be. And I'm also thinking that perhaps genre-wise and presentation-wise, potentially similar-ish
Okay.
to Advent Dawn. Synesthesia is interesting because it was actually a little bit more interactive than Advent Dawn. There was a little bit more point and click elements to it, and I think Advent Dawn overall is a better story.
Okay.
Overall, I think the story is better, and I think the execution is better. I think the writing is better. But there were elements in synesthesia, some of the point and click elements, and some of the presentation that potentially in the fourth one I could bring in the best elements of that game, and then the strengths of Advent Dawn and the things I've learned about this latest one, and go to a new level with the final story. So when I say the final story, I want to be careful because potentially, as I start to, you know, write ideas
Mm-hmm.
and to use the earlier analogy with the digging for the treasure, I might discover things about the story and the world that lead to more stories. But
Mm-hmm.
having said that, I would like to wrap up at least this phase of the stories with the next installment. Um, After that one, I'm really open to branching out potentially into something else. entirely. And when I say entirely, I just mean visual novels, which are my favorite type of uh, game, are also quite, uh, it's a very small niche
Mm-hmm.
um, in terms of getting broader exposure. So I wouldn't mind entertaining the idea of trying to keep games that are as story focused, but that have greater gameplay elements that might be able to reach a bit of a broader audience in the future. So, um, yeah, I wouldn't mind uh, going into that space potentially after this next game.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, not worst case scenario, best case scenario maybe is you do what lots of the anime are doing now, where it's like, oh, you need a bit more time for your story, you do, you know, this part one and part two, and you know, God knows, attack things like Attack on Titan had like three different endings to, or three different parts to wrap up their story. Right, so there's always that method should you find yourself like, oh, there's a lot more here that I still need to wrap up, right? So I think there's, you know, plenty of time and space to do that. um you know, and then the last thing that I really want to ask is, what is it that you want people to take away or leave with this, you know, with this entry in your series, in this game? Is there something you really want them to experience or to grab onto, or do you just want them to have a good time?
Mm. Yeah, it's a good question. I hope that through this story, people are able to see something differently in their everyday lives. I think when I think of some of the most important stories to me, they they reveal something often that we already know,
Mm-hmm.
but that they just allow you to open your eyes to what was always in front of you. And so my hope is that after this story, um, I mean, I hope they really enjoy it as they're
Mm-hmm.
playing it. I hope that the twists and the turns and the ups and the downs hit people in the right way. And I hope that they enjoy theory crafting. I've put so many hidden interpretations in. There's You can piece together all kinds of really crazy things if you were
Mm-hmm.
to pay attention to the little clues. I won't say any more because there might be spoilers. Um, so, so I hope people enjoy doing all that. But beyond that, I hope that once they hit that true ending and it's all done, that yeah, they just leave with that sense that they've taken notice of something that they always knew was true. Uh, but almost like there's a new value on life itself, I suppose. I know that sounds really a bit a bit funny to say, maybe a bit. I hope it doesn't sound melodramatic, but for me, I know, like for instance, if I think of some of the stories that have stayed with me, for instance, Steins Gate is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
For me personally, just the story, the main character, I won't say any spoilers, but he goes through so much crap that
Mm-hmm.
when you hit the ending, you just want to value everything you've got around you. It's just like, wow, things could have been so different. And so I won't take things for granted. So I hope through this story, being buried alive in a cave, in the
Mm-hmm.
darkness and through all that journey and the twists and turns, I hope that people get to the end and yeah, it just sticks with people. That's my hope.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what some of the best stories do, right? They stick with people. They make you see something that maybe was always there and you just didn't pay enough attention to for whatever reason. You know, it's something that uh, you you see, or even if you don't see it in yourself, maybe you see it in someone close to you, and you know. especially with the characters that you've created, and I think the different perspectives and their histories and their stories, right? It may not be maybe something that someone notices about themselves, but maybe something that they may, you know, question or notice about someone in their life, and maybe that's something that they take with them, and the way they interact with those people, right? The way people can stay so positive, the way people can continue to move forward, and how they grow, and acknowledging that in the human spirit and element, I think is something that stuck with me from your game, and the way that you've written some of these characters. Not all of them. I'm not going to say all of them are good people. I'll leave it at that. But obviously the ones that are, and the ones that make you be like, oh, you know what? These people may have gone through some things, and they keep this demeanor, and that's great, and that's a strength of character, and I should acknowledge that and recognize that in people more. And so I think you've done that really, really well.
Yeah, oh, thank you. I think it's true that um, the people around us, like we rely on one another in different ways. And I hope through Atlas's story, he's not the hero in the sense that he had it all together. Um, he, if anything, it's the people around him and their example that that he needs to learn to look past the facade, if that makes sense, and and grow. And so yeah, so I'm glad that came through, and yeah. So thanks for saying that. That's great.
Yeah, and I think people
Yeah,
will totally get that once
totally get that one.
once they experience the story and see Atlas's perspective, and the people around him, right? And I think that is just more reason why people should pick up the game, right? By the time this interview comes out, the review will also be up. So if people want to go and read the full review. I know visual novels are not for everyone. I love them. I've definitely feel like I've been having a visual novel summer, which is amazing and great. But this is definitely one that I feel like people should pick up and enjoy. And if you like escape rooms with a little bit of story, this is a good one. If you want something that you can play with in a weekend, maybe you're a busy person, right? This is that type of game that you can pick up and put down, especially with the paths and the routes, and it doesn't require too much of the player besides an open mind and a willingness to go into it. So that's my take on it, and people can read a much lengthier and wordier review, which we'll link down below. But if people are looking to see you on social media or on Discord, where can they find you? And we will make sure to also put the links down in the description.
Yeah, fantastic. The best way to connect is we mainly just use Discord. Although I have a Twitter or an X account, I'm barely on it to be honest. And I've tried other social medias. I just find Discord the best. So the best place to connect with us is Discord. I'm also active on Steam and the Steam community page as well. And so those are the two best ways to find us. And then obviously Advent Dawn's on Steam. So that's the best way to find the game. And yeah, thank you so much for the interview, for taking the time with me, and for reading the story. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I know we had to make time zones work, so really glad that we were able to do this. Thank you so much for your time. And for those of you who are watching, thank you for watching, for listening, however you choose to consume this, and make sure that you check out Advent Dawn. Again, the link will be down in the description, and make sure to like and subscribe to see more things like this on the Gamer Social Club channel. And thank you again so much, Q.
Thank you.